The Eagles' offense, from a systemic perspective, has several problems. That much is obvious at this point. But not all problems are created equal. And by that I mean Jalen Hurts is getting most or even all of the blame when, to be honest, if you watch all the tape and you pull all the relevant data for what this Eagles offense actually does very poorly, Jalen's been fine. Not great, like really not great, but not terrible. Just kind of fine. And hell, even I myself have been guilty of that tunnel vision on Hurts too in the past, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm better than anybody else in the media, but my goal today is to at least try to set the record straight on what's actually wrong with the Eagles offense from a systemic level, so that if we're going to criticize everything that's going wrong with Philly, we can at least criticize the right things. Also, by the way, quick PSA, because I didn't know where else to put this in the show, but if you happen to be a fan of our podcast, the Bootleg Football Podcast, which is over on the Bootleg Football channel, I know a lot of you didn't realize that I have a podcast, but I do. It's over on Bootleg Football. If you wanted to support the show directly, we did just drop our hoodies over on our clothing partner, Homage, which of course I'm wearing right now. They're very soft. They're very comfortable. I'm sure any of you that have already bought them can attest to that. And I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. Anyway, anything you buy directly from Homage at our link below, and especially our Bootleg hoodies, directly supports the show, and we appreciate everybody who did that. But for now, let's get to the reason why you're actually here.
The offense, I got to look at the main guy.
The 1 seed is now gone. It's gone. And all of a sudden, the division is in question.
All my buddies who are Eagles fans are freaking out. It's hard to put your finger on exactly what's going on with the passing game. You got to start to wonder with this Philly team, they're in a storm, and are they going to be able to work their way out of it?
There are 3 main issues with this Eagles offense that have all kind of built on top of each other to create this big mess of frustration. And we're going to go through those problems one by one today and show you how they all fit together as we go. And spoiler alert, by the way, Jalen Hurts' pocket skills and the Eagles' overall inability to handle blitzes are not 2 of those main problems. Yes, they are issues, but they're not the main issues. And they certainly are not what has rotted the core of this offense. What has rotted that core is the following. Problem number 1 is their lack of explosiveness in the run game, which I would argue is the fault of how their shotgun-centric offense is designed to begin with. Problem number 2 is how their over-reliance on that shotgun run game has directly led to their play-action passing game being among the worst in the entire NFL, and therefore their explosiveness in the passing game has also been not that great. And problem number 3, of course, is how their bottom-of-the-barrel motion percentage has made everything way harder on Jalen Hurts and his receivers than it needs to be, which then also contributes to their lack of ability to handle blitzes, and it contributes to Hurts holding the ball forever when his receivers can't get open and taking unnecessary sacks. Like I said, these primary problems are what led to all the secondary and tertiary problems that seem to be getting the most attention these days, but ideally by the end of this show, you're going to understand how they all fit together. So we're going to start things off by talking about the first problem on the docket, the run game. Philadelphia is an overwhelmingly shotgun-centric offense, to the point where after 15 weeks of football, the Eagles have only called 14 dropbacks the entire season that were not from the shotgun, which is dead last in the NFL, obviously. And not to be outdone, the Eagles running backs themselves also have the fewest carries from non-shotgun formations as well, at only 61. For those doing the math at home, that's like 4 runs per game that are either from under center or from the pistol. While for comparison's sake, the Rams, Lions, 49ers, and Dolphins typically have between 17 to 20 runs from under center per game. It's not even close. And so as a result of that reliance on shotgun formations, the Eagles' run game is extremely predictable and also very below average in terms of generating chunk plays. In fact, if you just look at rushing concepts where running backs are the designated ball carrier and not the quarterback, Philly calls inside zone 53% of the time this year when they run the ball, which is first in the NFL. And they call it so much because the blocking scheme of inside zone and the angle of attack for a running back when they're running inside zone just fits a shotgun formation really well. By contrast, if you try to run outside zone from the gun, again, not inside zone this time, we're talking about outside zone, the running back has to get almost parallel to the line of scrimmage just to try to hit the front side of that concept, and it makes it really hard to hit the cutback lane because the cut is way sharper when the running back has to go that flat down the line, and it's just an awkward concept to run from shotgun for that reason, especially compared to when you're running outside zone from under center, where the angle of attack is way more manageable for a running back when they are coming from depth, and so the cutbacks are a lot quicker and more decisive when you're running that from under center, and therefore the concept overall has more potential for explosive gains. Again, from shotgun, the angles are just not good, so the Eagles generally don't call it. I would argue that shotgun power concepts are a little awkward as well compared to when you run power from under center or in the pistol. It's more doable than outside zone, yes, but still not ideal. And that's why the Eagles basically do not run power at all either. They've only done it 9 times all season long. But anyway, I digress. My point here is that is an absolutely outrageously high percentage of calling just one style of run, but they kind of have to call it that often because they spend so much time in shotgun. That conscious decision on the Eagles' part, by the way, is especially outrageous when you consider that, statistically speaking, inside zone is one of the least effective runs in football at generating explosive plays. League-wide, inside zone results in an explosive gain, meaning a gain of 10 yards or more, just 7.8% of the time. Only duo is worse among all core run concepts at 7.5%. And to be honest, inside zone and duo are basically cousins. They are extremely similar concepts to one another. And the reason why they're not that explosive is because their main purpose as a concept is to get 4 or 5 yards when you really need 4 or 5 yards. It's all about reading it out in between the tackles, getting downhill when you get a crease, or even if you don't get a crease, keeping the offense on schedule, and doing your best to get into a short yardage situation on 3rd down so the tush push can do the rest and start the whole sequence all over again. That is what the Eagles do. Lather, rinse, repeat. And just to be clear, by the way, that's fine. The Eagles running backs as a position group are 8th in the NFL among all running back groups in yards per carry at 4.4, which is about what you can expect from your typical inside zone run anyway. And there's not a whole lot wrong with that. But I will say that realistically, there is a drawback to this philosophy that I don't think the Eagles accounted for, and it's that they are now kneeling before the holy altar of monotonous efficiency and completely sacrificing their ability to get explosive plays. When you really look at how this offense operates, because they call inside zone so much, they are 21st in the league at generating explosives with their running backs and only get about 1.7 of them per game. That's not very many, of course, which means the burden of getting chunk plays for this offense rests almost entirely on the shoulders of Jalen Hurts and his receivers. And so if Hurts or his receivers have an off game, this team is pretty much dead in the water because they don't have any other ways to win. I mean, they do have other ways, but they actively choose not to use them because of how they line up every play. When you look around at the best offenses in the league, they run a bit of everything, and they for damn sure run concepts like counter, power, and outside zone more often, and get their running backs to the edges more often with those concepts so that they can actually generate explosive plays and not make their quarterbacks have to do all the heavy lifting. The Eagles don't do that, and that brings us back to problem number 2, which is how that intentionally stale and boring design of their run game and their lack of running from under center has also had the consequence of ruining Philadelphia's play-action passing game as well. How's that for a teaser, by the way? Did I properly bait the hook for you to stick around for the next minute while I explain how this episode was made possible in the first place? Well, technically speaking, Philly shitting the bed on national TV 3 weeks in a row is what made this episode possible, but still, you get the point. There's only a few days left in December, which means we finally arrived at one of the most time-honored traditions of this channel, Brett making an episode in the very last week of the month because he has a deadline for Factor that he really has to hit. If you somehow don't know this already, Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. All Factor meals arrive pre-prepared and ready to eat in just 2 minutes, which is always great for me because during my heavy production days during the week, like say this one, I don't really have time to cook a full lunch from scratch, and I definitely don't have time to go out, so these are really fast and really convenient. And there are more than 35 meal options each week that I can choose from that fit most dietary preferences, Plus, they all taste great too, because they're all made from real ingredients. It is actual food, not processed and preserved stuff that you buy in the freezer aisle. And that's what makes them different than every other microwavable meal that you're probably gonna find. So if you're looking for quick food options to get you through a busy day, but you also want to eat something that you're actually going to like, I think Factor is definitely worth giving a try just to see if you like it too. And just to make it easier to try it out, by the way, you can use my promo code by heading to factor75.com or click the link below and use promo code FilmRoom50 to get 50% off your first box. So again, just to try it out at a huge discount, you can go to factor75.com at the link below and use code FilmRoom50 to get 50% off your first box. Thank you again to Factor for sponsoring this week's show. And with that, let's get back to it. Buckle up because we're talking about shotgun formations again. When looking at the most explosive passing games around the NFL, they all share a lot of similarities, but what stands out the most is their use of being under center. In fact, 7 of the top 8 passing offenses in terms of explosive pass percentage are in the bottom half of the league in their usage of shotgun formations. They go under center a lot more often, and in particular, the top 3 teams by a wide margin, San Francisco, Miami, and Houston, all come from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, or our Kyle Shanahan himself, obviously. The Shanahan offense and the many variations of it around the NFL are known for putting their quarterbacks under center, having a diverse and explosive run game where you can call any concept at any time, and using hard play action fakes where the quarterback turns their back to the defense and really sells that fake so that the pass rush will slow down and play a run that isn't actually coming, and so that the linebackers will suck up and create more space over the middle of the field. The whole system is designed to attack this intermediate middle area and creating opportunities for high percentage throws that are still down the field and well past the sticks, but are much easier to complete than a 30-yard shot play down the sideline. And these throws over the middle also have an added bonus in that they can result in big yards after catch opportunities when the middle of the field is vacated. When you look at how the Eagles' play action passing game is designed, however, it's basically the exact opposite. Again, they do not really go under center ever, so they don't utilize longer developing, harder play action fakes ever, which makes it really tough to actually manipulate linebackers to clear out the intermediate middle of the field because those linebackers can just quickly read the quarterback giving a little bullshit fake from the shotgun while staring them in the eyes, and then drop back into their zones and go about their day. If you look at Philadelphia's target map on play action passes specifically over the course of the entire season, they only have 12 passing attempts that are targeted from the numbers and in at a depth between 10 to 25 yards down the field. That is 23rd in the league and puts them in the company of the Patriots, Jets, Saints, Bears, Panthers, Giants, and Steelers, just to give you an idea of the other offenses in that range that refuse to work the middle of the field. Meanwhile, Houston, one of the best offenses in the NFL, has more than double that number at 29. San Francisco, again, another elite offense, has 19, which is surprisingly low by their standards, but still 7th in the NFL. And Miami, get this, has 38, which leads the league and is more than 3 times as many as Philadelphia this year. And ultimately, those numbers are a big contributing reason why the Dolphins, Texans, and 49ers are 1st, 2nd, and 3rd respectively in explosive receptions this year, while the Eagles are treading water at 14th with only 1 more explosive passing play than the Derek Carr-led Saints. Everything the Eagles do feels like it's to make the sport as hard as humanly possible. They're constantly taking shots to A.J. Brown down the sideline and hoping that he just overwhelms whoever's covering him. They don't even bother to manipulate defenses to open up the middle of the field. They don't have a diverse run game that can generate explosive plays and take pressure off of Jalen Hurts. It's all just difficult. But perhaps their worst crime of all, and honestly, this pisses me off more than anything else they do, and it's the 3rd pillar of this episode, is the fact that the Eagles coaching staff absolutely refuses to use motion. Philadelphia has the lowest shift in motion percentage in the NFL, and it's the lowest by a lot. They are the only team in the league that is under 30%. Even the Panthers, Cardinals, and Jets are almost at 40%. And what that lack of motion does is it makes the offense static, which then means the opposing defense has more freedom to either blitz the absolute hell out of them because everyone's standing still and they don't really need to make any coverage adjustments right at the snap, Or alternatively, they can just play their receivers in tight man coverage and not give free releases ever because nobody's moving around. When you study the top offenses in the league, basically all of them are very motion heavy. Miami, San Francisco, and Houston, again, of course, as well as the Rams, Lions, and yes, even the Cowboys. When those teams are using all of that motion, the main reason why they're doing it is to force DBs to back off and adjust as the ball is being snapped so that the receivers can get free releases. It's not just about making them redo their count if they're in a match zone coverage or something like that, which obviously that's important too, but it's mainly about forcing them to concede space early in the route, because if a receiver is given space for free early in the route, it can help them dictate to that corner and not the other way around. Football at its core is a game of space. He who can control space and influence it will generally win the game. So the Eagles actively choosing not to use motion to control or influence DBs into giving space and making life easier for AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, that's just one of the weirdest coaching decisions that I've seen all season. Again, it's almost like they want to make the game as hard on themselves as they possibly can. Their entire philosophy is just lining up and trying to out-talent everybody. Put AJ Brown outside against press coverage and tell him to go win. Run DeAndre Swift into a brick wall over and over and over again and tell him to go win. Get into short yardage and do a tush push and tell your offensive line to just go win. Or if you're in a long yardage situation and your receivers or your offensive linemen are not winning, just tell Jalen Hurts to do it all by himself and go win with his legs. Say what you want about Shane Steichen running a lot of the same formations and concepts in Indianapolis, but at least the guy does it in a way that makes sense. They use motion way more often. They attack the middle of the field off of play action at the 4th highest rate in the NFL. And they at least acknowledge that outside zone runs exist. And they call them sometimes. Go figure, it looks like a real offense, even with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. To me, when I watch this Eagles offense, it looks like they put Shane Steichen's playbook into ChatGPT and asked for a summary, and they're just calling their offense based on the summary rather than the actual playbook because reading is for nerds. And yes, that is a joke, but honestly, I don't think I'm that far off. I guess what I'm really trying to say here is, if you thought the Eagles' defense being bad is the reason they're not going to win the Super Bowl, you're actually wrong. The reason they're not going to win the Super Bowl is because their defense is bad and their offense is bad at the exact same time. How's that for analysis? All right, that'll wrap it up for me this week. If for some godforsaken reason you want to see more of me every single week, we do put out 2 podcasts a week over on our podcast channel, the Bootleg Football Podcast. This week's episode was our first mock draft of draft season because a lot of you root for really bad teams, and that's all you have right now in order to cling to life is mock drafts. So we did one, or at least a top 10 mock draft. So if you root for a shitty team, go watch that. Also, one last thing, we have an ever-growing, very active, somewhat unhinged Discord community that is linked down in the description below. It's a public Discord, but there's also a private section for patrons only. So if you happen to be a Patreon supporter, make sure to get in on that. And yeah, I think that's all my plugs. Enjoy your holidays with your friends and family, and I will see you, I guess, at some point in January, now that I think about it. Yeah, next month. Cheers.